Welcome everyone to the beginning of what I am sure will be a very exciting 2 days at the Human Advantage Conference. Soon I will pass the questioning to my colleague Ted Utoft. Ted is our Global Chief Growth Officer at the BVA Nudge Consulting. But first, I am proud, so proud, to introduce our keynote speaker for the Human Advantage event, Professor Cass Sunstein. Cass is currently the Robert Walmsley University Professor at Harvard Law School. He is the founder and director of the program on behavioral economics and public policy at Harvard Law School. From 2009 to 2012, he was administrator of the White House Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. Cass has advised officials at the United Nations, the European Commission, the World Bank, and many nations on issues of law and public policy. He is the author of hundreds of articles and at least 15 books, including the famous Nudge, with a new final edition last year, and in 2021, Noise with Daniel Kahneman and Olivier Sibony, and most recently, Sludge. So a lot of topic to talk. Welcome, Cass. A big thank you for being with us. We are very excited to have you for this opening conversation at the Human Advantage Conference. Welcome, Cass.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's a thrill and an honor to be able to be here and to talk about these issues with you.
Great to have you here, Cass. Let's jump into it. We're here in 2022, nearly 15 years since the publication of Nudge. I think that book for a lot of us was the kind of first introduction to behavioral science. For many of us, the first time we'd even heard of behavioral science and applied behavioral science. There are now more than 200 public organizations in the world applying behavioral science to improve public policy, including governments in the UK, in America, in Singapore, Canada, Australia, France, and global organizations like the United Nations and the OECD. Also, the biggest and most innovative companies in the tech world, whether that's Google, Facebook, Microsoft, or in more, dare I say, traditional sectors like JP Morgan, Unilever, AstraZeneca, BNP Paribas, Mars, applying the Nudge approach and behavioral science learnings. Some of them have even created a new role in terms of a chief behavioral officer or a chief behavioral science officer. How would you, Cass, explain this amazing revolution of the application of behavioral science, and what are the main factors that you think could explain this success?
It's a great question. I'd say that human behavior is critical if the goal is to reduce deaths on the highway, to reduce environmental harm, to promote diversity and inclusion, to reduce poverty. Whatever your policy issue, human behavior is likely to be of central importance. If you're in the private sector and you want to, let's say, do good, you want to promote healthier behavior on the part of your customers, you want to sell products that will be beneficial to them, even if they maybe are a little present biased to the consumers or not thinking about the long term. If you're a company that's interested in doing good, behavioral science is relevant to you. And if you're a company that's interested in doing well, you want to sell your product, the behavioral work is got some lessons for you. So I think those are some of the reasons. I think something that's been very exciting, like spectacularly exciting over the last 10 years in particular, is that there are behavioral findings about, let's say, the importance of framing, or about loss aversion, or about unrealistic optimism, or about present bias. And there's a host of them that have organized a bit what companies and governments only had intuitions about before. And the intuitions might have been wrong, exactly wrong, or the intuitions might have been kind of vaguely right, but we didn't have a framework or a term or data to organize the intuitions. And what's happened is now that there are these concepts out there and there are new ones developing and old ones are being improved, there's a capacity on the part of some little entity, let's say in Berlin or Chicago or Tokyo. It can be a little entity to learn something that no one had ever known before. And that thing can get clarity about what we thought we knew with data, or can help solve a big problem, a problem that citizens who are really struggling, let's say, under circumstances of pandemic, or people who are really trying to uh, get a product that would make their lives a lot better, the testing and the empirical work that has now concepts behind it can make for an advance. So in 2022, we're going to learn some things that we've never known before.
Mm-hmm. And is there an area, Cass, or a sector or a theme where you're seeing the most impact of this adoption of applied behavioral science or nudge theory? Is there one or two spaces where you're seeing that's it, they're hitting it, we're really learning something different and
I
new?
think so. And I'd put it under the general category of customer service. I think customer service is the kind of prize winner of 2022. And the reason is that we know that if you want to serve customers, and I'm thinking about governments as well as private sectors, there are things you can do that will be really terrible. They won't work at all, but you might be tempted to do them. And one example is to emphasize that people aren't benefiting from something or aren't doing something. Now, to accentuate the negative in that way can often make the problem worse. If you emphasize how many people aren't doing something, then people might think, well, I'll be like them, or I guess I'll join the crowd, or at least I won't exit from the crowd. And there is fantastic work about reducing administrative burdens or sludge, and that is an exceptional opportunity for governments to do better. I just noticed as I flew from one city to another today, actually, that there's going to be an opportunity in the United States to put your driver's license on your phone for travel. Your driver's license on your phone. That's a behaviorally informed initiative. It's not going to, cure climate change or prevent poverty, but it's going to make a lot of people's travel experience a lot easier. And there are things that are in that vicinity that might help people get health care, or might help people get um, uh, methods for reducing the risk that they're going to get sick or get hurt at work. And that's more than inspiring to see.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the application of behavioral science theory started within public policy, but now, as I mentioned earlier, more and more companies in the private sector are applying behavioral science learnings. And during these next 2 days, we'll hear from a number of companies sharing some quite amazing case studies and points of view about how to apply. I think you're supportive of this movement. And in 2019, you chaired the jury of the AIM Nudging for Good Awards, which rewards the best projects for consumer goods companies using nudges to help consumers adopt a healthier or more sustainable lifestyle. And we'll have a roundtable later today with the promoters of that great initiative and some of the winners. Can you tell us why you think it's important and useful that private organizations use behavioral science?
Complete. So much of life, whatever country we're speaking of, is made better or not made better because of what private companies do. So whether we're speaking of employees, investors, or clients and customers, that's where a lot of the action is. So if you have a little company, my father, I'll say, had a construction company, a small construction company, tried to sell houses. And there were behaviorally relevant things that he could have used to help his workers. It was a little company, he didn't have a lot of workers, but his workers not get injured on the job. He didn't know about behavioral science. He could have sold good houses more if he'd known behavioral science. So maybe people are scared of buying, they might want to rent, or maybe they don't think they can get a loan on good terms, but they can, and behavioral science can really help. If you're selling, let's say, food, it might be a big company, a really big soft drink company, and you might want to move toward healthier options. You might want to sell diet or no sugar products, or you might want to sell snacks that are have lower calories but are also really delicious? How do you do that? And you might want your future to be one where you are, extremely profitable and you really feel proud. That's beautiful. Yes, if you are doing really well for your employees and yourself and your stockholders, and you feel really proud. And to move toward healthy offerings is exactly that. We might be talking about a company that makes a product maybe that could treat workers well or could increase or decrease animal welfare in some important way, or be neutral to animal welfare, whether it was formerly harmful. And that's something a lot of people really care about. And to use behavioral science, either by framing something in a way that people understand and appreciate, or, and this I think is Olympic gold for behavioral science, making the better choice the easier choice. That's why, by the way, customer service is a 2022 winner. If the better choice for the customer or for the globe is the easier choice, we're going to see a lot of that. And many companies are using behavioral strategies for reducing complexity, reducing sludge or administrative burdens, using automaticity as a way of helping people. You are opted in to the good thing in terms of the planet and yourself. But if you don't want that, that's okay, unless it's really horrific. It's your choice. But the behavioral nudge can often give, let's say, sense and benefit,
Yeah.
benefit of the doubt.
And I like when you talk about sludge, you don't, I think in a lot of people's minds, sludges are only very clear, very profiteering kind of manipulative interventions or nudges. But I like that you use the term kind of, administrative burden or kind of bureaucratic burden, because I think sometimes we forget that some sludge work, let's say, is somewhat unintentional and yet derails better behavior. At BB Nudge Consulting, many of these topics that you just talked about, we're partnering with companies on things like diversity and inclusion or sustainability, product development, improving customer experience, or well-being at work. So there's a lot of challenges where behavioral science can help. But I wanted to ask you, what are the challenges which make the most sense for you? Or what would be an area where you'd like to see more practitioners focus on when it comes to kind of nudging for good? Either because you think it's really underserved, or you think there's a big opportunity here, go after it.
Helping people who are struggling economically. I'd put that as one of the candidates for top of the list, either by helping them get a product that they maybe don't think they have access to, but can make their lives much better. And one way to do that, of course, is to lower the price. Another way to do that is to make it feasible for them to get it on terms that are appealing to them. And that is a prime imperative. I'd also put environmental protection at the top of the list, where environmental protection might mean climate change. Often people think about that. But the beauty of efforts to improve sustainability is that you will often reduce other environmental problems at the same time. So to move toward things that emit less in the way of ordinary pollutants like particulate matter and ozone, that really saves lives. And I was in a city, I won't name it because I love the people in that city, not long ago, where you just land from a place where the air is pretty good, and you notice immediately the air is dirty. And if you look at the data in places like that, people are getting sick and in some cases dying prematurely. And you can't change the world in a month, but you can change someone's world. And often a behaviorally informed move toward environmentally preferable behavior will change someone's world.
Mhm. Cass, just an additional question regarding sustainability. I think you have added a chapter on sustainability in the final version of Nudge, which means quite a lot. Do you have some intervention or experiment which have been done that you think are really very interesting to share with our audience?
I'll tell you a story. Part of the time, much of the time, I live in Washington, D.C. these days, and I received from a company a notice saying, "Do you want to switch to clean energy?" it's easy, here's how you do it. And it was a one-page form. That's not bad, but the form asked for some information that I can't easily find. So I threw it out the first time I received it. Sadly, I was sad when I threw it out. Then I received it again a few days ago, showed it to my wife, and said, we should shift to green energy, shouldn't we? Do you have that information that they asked for? Said no. So I threw it out a second time. The behaviorally preferred approach is automatically to enroll people in green energy. And that in Germany and in Switzerland and in Southern California, to name just 3 places, has produced spectacular results. So in Switzerland, a few years ago, as part of their climate change and environmental movement, they switched a lot of people, including large and small businesses, to be automatically green. And in Switzerland, the greener approach is actually a little more expensive. So you might expect that businesses in particular would think, well, if they regulate me, I'll do it. But if they nudge me and I get freedom to save some money, I'm going to save the money. That would be the University of Chicago prediction. And I've worked at the University of Chicago for many years. And so that would be my prediction. But the prediction was false. The large companies in Switzerland and the small companies in Switzerland decided they are going to stick with green, even though it's more expensive. So I'd love to see all over the world companies making the greener option, make the green option the automatic option. Yes, so the expectation would be that companies at least would care about profits, and if they can opt out of a more expensive option, that's exactly what they do. But the finding is that in Switzerland, the vast majority of small companies, medium-sized companies, and large companies stuck with the environmentally better default. They decided to stay with it rather than to maximize profits. And that is the behavioral prediction that companies would believe that, well, it's a little creepy to opt out of the environmentally preferred option. And the data suggests that the effect on the environment is so strong and positive that it crushes the costs. The benefits well exceed the costs. And this is something that companies can do without any government, and lots of them are. They automatically enroll people in green energy. And some people in companies are thinking if we have the legal and the economic means to do that, then that's exactly what we should do. And that's large scale. That can have a very big effect on environmental quality in whole nations. But on small scale, a company can say, well, we're going to go green and we're going to do that. That's going to be our option. And we're going to inform our consumers. And that might actually be a very good thing for our business as well as for our ability to sleep at night.
Great. As behavioral science and nudges are more embraced and applied by all these different various organizations, the question of ethics of influence is critical. And could you tell us a little bit about, in your eyes, what is necessary to apply behavioral science ethically? And I do want you to talk a little bit, I know we've mentioned sludge, but this topic of one of your most recent books, how do we guide organizations, private or public, to nudging ethically, and how do we avoid that from turning into sludge?
Okay, great. So we would want to distinguish, I think, between different kinds of nudges. So some of them are educative, where you provide consumers with information about positive or negative things associated with the product. That kind of nudge is highly unlikely to raise ethical concerns. If you inform your customers about something involving the environment, that's a good thing from the standpoint of ethics. That's not something to worry over. If you give people a reminder that a bill is due or an opportunity is present, that's not ethically troublesome. That's ethically wonderful. If you give people a warning about something that's going to happen if they don't do something. Now, the thing might not be that horrible, so people might think, okay, I'll miss my doctor's appointment, or I won't pay my bill on time. But a warning, that's not ethically troublesome. So let's think of educative nudges as very hard to question, though maybe we can think of one that we would question. Then there are other kinds of nudges that involve architecture. So here's an example. People can choose, I'm looking at my laptop right now, so they can choose double-sided or single-sided defaults on their laptops. One nudge would be to say, do you want to choose double-sided or single-sided defaults? That would sometimes called prompted choice or sometimes mandatory choice. A company might say to consumers, do you want X or Y, as a question that must be answered or should be answered if you're going to have a relationship with the company. It's hard to object to that unless there's something tendentious or manipulative about the way the choice is framed. If you say, do you want to choose a horrible option that's going to make your life terrible, or a good one that's going to make your life wonderful, and the one that's described as terrible is actually wonderful, then that's deceit and maybe fraud, and that would be bad. But mandatory choice or prompted choice by itself is fine. Then there's another architectural thing which we've discussed, which is automatic enrollment. And if you're automatically enrolled in something that it's in your interest to be automatically enrolled in, that's not ethically problematic, but you had better be told about it. So with respect to architectural nudges, transparency and disclosure are really important, and so that people have clarity that they can opt out and that they are their consent is real. There's been some discussion in various parts of the world, both for private companies and for governments, about things called dark patterns, which are manipulative actions that are designed to take people's money or time away. And here's an example of a dark pattern where there are fees that are hidden, that aren't visible, and that are real, and that violates the transparency requirement. Or when you buy a product, you're automatically buying 3 other things, and you don't really know about that. That use of automaticity is ethically very troublesome. So
a lot of those auto enrollments and ongoing subscriptions that people are unaware of, et cetera. Yeah.
Exactly. So this wouldn't be a good objection to automatic enrollment as such. It would be a good objection to automatic enrollment where people don't have clarity that they've been automatically enrolled in certain things. So we really want to have a kind of Bill of Rights for nudging where we'd require that the nudges be in the interest of the people who are being nudged and that they are consistent with the values of the people who are being nudged. We want to make sure that existing human rights are not being compromised in any way. We want to make sure that the nudges aren't things that are hidden or opaque. We want to make sure that people have clarity about them. I think we need a principle against manipulation, that manipulation is the English word verboten. Okay, that's the German word, but that's the right word. Manipulation should be taboo, and we need to figure out what manipulation is. But the nudges that we approve and we observe are the opposite of manipulative. If you are educated about the risks associated with a product, that's not manipulating you. If you are given automatic enrollment in something with framing that is deceptive or emotionally evocative and without transparency about what the thing really will do to or for you, that is manipulative.
Is there in your mind, Cass, an area or a sector that you have a little concern about where you feel like the adoption of kind of applied behavioral science or nudge theory could be used in the wrong way? And I know that could be in any area or any industry, but is there one that keeps you a little on edge?
Yeah. So I'll talk about a sector and then I'll talk about an instrument. So the sector is social media. and the use of social media, uh, social media's engagement with nudging and behavioral science to promote more and more clicking and more time online is, I think, a problem. And it's a problem, of course, insofar as very young people are spending time being manipulated often to click and click and click and click. That's not so good. It's a problem insofar as we see the spread of misinformation or disinformation. That's a very serious problem. And it's broadly a problem insofar as we see time engaged on the platform as the thing that's being maximized. The reason is, this is going to be slightly technical, but pre-behavioral economics emphasized revealed preferences as the kind of gold standard. So if people are buying something or going somewhere or doing something, that's their revealed preference, and that's the gold standard. What behavioral economics and behavioral science have shown is that that's not the gold standard, that people might be getting addicted to something, or they might be unrealistically optimistic, so making a choice that's terrible, or they might be focused on the short term rather than the long term. And that's why they end up making certain consumption choices. So the revealed preference is not the gold standard. Let's put that in large font and put it on the back of every gas-powered and electric vehicle. Insofar as we're trying to maximize engagement on social media, they are using pre-behavioral economics thinking about what's to be maximized. And that can be terrible, can make people's lives worse. So that I really do worry about as a domain in which in this very beautiful world where behavioral science is often making for improvements, this is not the ideal use. The mechanism is use of algorithms. So we can use algorithms to promote something. And what might be promoted is engagement, or it might be sales, or it might be anything at all. And the use of algorithms to promote those things has the same problem as the focus on engagement or clicks has for social media. So if you use an algorithm, let's say, to press hard into certain people, certain product offerings, and let's say, those people aren't adequately informed, or those people are, let's say, suffering from a behavioral bias, you know that because the algorithm's are really smart. Then the use of the algorithm exploits ignorance and behavioral bias rather than what nudges are supposed to do, which is to supply information where it's lacking and to counteract a behavioral bias in a way that improves people's lives. So I don't have the kind of horror of algorithms that some people do. They can be fantastic. They can save lives. They are saving lives. They fly airplanes. They help doctors. They're in many ways the greatest thing since sliced bread, in some ways better than sliced bread. Still, they can create terrible problems if they are used in a way that maximizes something that really isn't what we should be focused on maximizing.
Great. And Cass, I'm going to ask one last question before I hand back to Eric. But with our audience in mind, many of whom are passionate about behavioral science and nudge, but might be working in a corporate or commercial organization or a government where may not yet be a specific budget or team for applying behavioral science. How would you encourage them to make those kind of early moves to incorporating behavioral science into the work that they do?
What a great question. So my observation is in companies often, the best behavioral work is done by people who are keenly interested in it and have some information, who aren't part of a formal nudge unit or behavioral insights team. They might be people who are involved in sales or marketing or in product development even. Steve Jobs had a fantastic working knowledge of behavioral science. He knew the beauty, actually the literal beauty, of appealing to people's intuitions and how they think, rather than, having a conception of human beings which is coming out of 1970s economics departments. He had the right conception. And there are people everywhere, really, who can use behavioral science knowing, for example, that people are loss averse. That's relevant. Or knowing that complexity can be much more devastating to consumers or employees than anyone intends. So if you take a form that is 7 pages and turn it to 1 page, you reduce a time tax on people, and that can make people more productive. They enjoy their days better, and they're going to like your product and their job more.
Okay, thanks so much, Cass. It's always great to have the opportunity to get your insight. It's really wonderful. Before we go, we would love to get your prediction for the future of behavioral science as a field, and maybe what do you think the future looks like, and anything you are excited or hopeful about, and maybe one warning or watch out.
Okay, great. So what I'm most excited about is the proliferation of work that draws on the book Scarcity by Mullinathon and Shafir to design better private and public actions. And that is a fantastic book. And I think its amazingness is clearer every week. The basic thesis of the book is that each of us has limited bandwidth in our heads. Even if we're really, really smart, each of us has limits. And if you are poor or busy or hungry or old or sick, then the bandwidth problem is going to be more serious. And this is relevant to companies as much as to governments who are working with and trying to help and sometimes trying to sell to all of these groups. Scarcity of attention, scarcity of bandwidth is a new frontier, and it emphasizes the imperative of reducing administrative burdens, increasing simplification, making communication very, very easy. I was recently dealing with a government, I won't tell the country, that had a new website to help people make certain kinds of choices. It could have been a private entity, it happened to be a government. And the people who designed it are amazing. They're engineers, and if you're not an engineer or a specialist, this website in its kind of early incarnation was a nightmare. It was just too hard. And the engineers didn't think about behavior or scarcity. As it was redesigned with the help of behavioral science experts, it's really good. Anyone can use it. It's kind of fun. And cognitive scarcity isn't a problem for people. So I think that's a big frontier. And it's a kind of thrilling prospect. And we're seeing in real time companies and governments responding to it. That is, reduce burdens, reduce complexity, especially because people have limited cognitive bandwidth. In terms of things to worry about, I think manipulation is the thing to worry about, where Thaler and I did not focus in our first work on this subject of the use of behaviorally informed techniques to steal money from people and to take their time away. There's a new paper, I confess, I wrote called Manipulation as Theft. It took me a long time to get there, meaning I didn't see it clearly enough. The fact that manipulative behavior, it's really like you're stealing from people. And I think we need the best companies in the world and the best governments in the world to develop a principle of that takes the following form. There's a right not to be manipulated, and we're not going to manipulate you.
Okay, thanks again, Cass. Wonderful. It has been a real pleasure to have you here to kick off day one of the Human Advantage. So a big thank you.
All thanks to you. It's a great honor to be able to talk to you, and this is going to be an amazing event.
And to our participants, stay tuned and logged in. We have a huge array of speakers and roundtables coming up to showcase real-life application of behavioral science, many cases like some of those that Cass has mentioned, showing where we can apply behavioral science and generate real, actual impact. We'll see you soon.